Welcome to English with Leanne. Today's idiom is from scratch, and we use this with a few different words. We might say to make from scratch, to bake from scratch, to start from scratch, and to start over from scratch. So there's a lot to go from here. But from scratch means from the start. So if we think about to make from scratch, you'll hear this with cooking a lot, and this means that you aren't going to use a box mix, that you're going to start with the ingredients. For example, I make bread from scratch. This means that I make my bread from flour, sugar, water, butter, and yeast. And I mix that all together myself. I don't use a mix. I make it from scratch. You might hear me say, I made this bread from scratch, and you'll know that I made it myself, and I didn't use anything other than the beginning ingredients. And so to make from scratch will mean that if I say to bake from scratch, you might hear this, you're more likely to hear make, but to bake from scratch is going to mean the same thing as to make from scratch, but you are baking. So cookies, cakes, bread, not cooking. It's different. The most general use of this is to start from scratch. It's more general than to make from scratch, but to start from scratch means to start from the beginning. So when you start from the beginning, that means you don't have stuff you're already using. If you start a project from a beginning, you don't start it from a previous project. You don't use something you already had to start your project. However, if you start over from scratch, this means that you had already started, and now what you had before you have to get rid of and start again with nothing. Let's do a couple examples. To start from scratch, we're going to need to start from scratch. We've never done this before. Here you're saying that you haven't done it before, you don't know exactly where to begin, so you're going to start at the very beginning, maybe with research. An example with to start over from scratch would be that maybe you're at work and you're working on a project, and everything is going well, you think, and then suddenly you go, this is all wrong. We made a mistake at the beginning. We need to start over from scratch. So now you have to throw out everything you already did and start over from scratch. From scratch, a lot of these expressions come from racing. If you remember my video to jump the gun, the first one I made, in that video I talk about where that idiom came from, which was from racing. And I talked about the ready, set, go. And when you're going to start a race, you often put your foot at a line in the ground. That's where you're starting from. And some races, they would scratch that line. Here's a little video of me trying to scratch a starting line. Didn't work well, but I tried. And so you would start from that scratch in the ground to start from scratch. But like I said, to make from scratch, to bake from scratch, to start from scratch, to start over from scratch, all have the meaning of starting from the start or starting from the beginning, using almost nothing. So good luck using these idioms.